I don't know about you, but I could use something that doesn't have anything to do with the stories in America right now. Probably most everyone else in the Catholic commentary sphere is focusing on this week's events and the predictable mess that it has become. Instead, I'm going to give you church news. And boy, do I have a fun one for you today. While the Vatican has decided that Christmas liturgical events like the Midnight Mass on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning Mass aren't important enough to have available to the public this year, they did grace us with some inspirational Christmas material. I'm not sure what they're supposed to inspire, but in me, and likely in many of you, it'll inspire confusion and a weird sense of being uncomfortable. So let's get into this fun story because at this point, anything is better than the major secular events of this week. While the world had its eyes turned to America, the Catholic news agency reported that it has seen a letter from the Vatican Secretary of State noting that Pope Francis's Christmas liturgies at the Vatican will be offered without public participation this year. The letter, sent by the Secretary of State to Vatican embassies, said that the Christmas Mass would be celebrated in a private form without the presence of the members of the diplomatic corps of the Vatican. It also noted that the liturgies will be streamed online. Yay, more online masses. I don't know about you, but those are my absolute favorite. Yes, I'm being sarcastic. But the best part, this letter came just days after Francis met with leaders in an Assisi-style meeting with the theme of fraternity. There's that word again, fraternity, which has become more important than the Christmas liturgy. Sorry if that sounds provocative, but let's face the facts here. But remember, this is the nativity of the Lord, the season of birth and hope, the beginning of the redemption of the human race, the removal of original sin through the virgin birth, a process that would be completed on the cross and resurrection during Passiontide and Easter. We've been told by the possible next leader of my home that the coming winter will be dark. That is illustrated rather aptly with what the Vatican decided to present to the world for Christmas, for the nativity of the Lord. The Vatican decided to, gift us all, I guess, with this piece of what is supposed to be sacred art. For those on the audio-only side of things, what we have here are some crude carvings of Our Lady, of St. Joseph, and even of our Lord, carved from what look like dowels and adorned with overly simplistic materials. The end product looks like something I would have fumbled my way through in a middle school shop class. The best part, or maybe strangest, is the zombie mule that is part of this postmodern nativity set. And I say postmodern because, like so much of the liturgical art we see now, be it in the modern vestments seen at the Amazon Synod or liturgical music that sounds like it would be more at home on Christian rock radio, these sorts of displays represent a clear break from the traditions of the faith, especially of the Advent and Christmas seasons. These are presented as an offering from the Vatican while the Vatican decides to not go forward with public masses at Christmas. Truly a strange way to commemorate the Nativity of the Lord. And as I said a couple of days ago, if you think these lack of public masses is going to be limited to the Vatican, well, pay attention to the signs. It's probably coming to a parish near you, or lack thereof. An important principle to remember when looking at all of this, and all the rest of the arts that the Vatican has graced us with these past few years, and let's be frank about this, since the Council, is something the Church has always taught with the concept of the transcendentals. And I'm going to paraphrase some material here from the Cardinal Newman Society. Catholic intellectual inquiry is to use the lens of truth, goodness, and beauty to evaluate a subject under consideration. These three elements are often understood as being among the transcendentals. The transcendentals are the timeless and universal attributes of being. They are the property of all beings. They reflect the divine origin of all things and the unity of all truth and reality in God. These elements are among the deepest realities. They help to unite people across time and culture and are often a delight to explore and discuss because they are substantive to our very nature. In other words, truth, goodness, and beauty are realities not subject to personal taste. They're not really relative in the slightest, and they point to the divine. This is reflected in the arts historically, and why the Church has always been a champion of the arts. It's why great amounts of treasure was spent in the Renaissance on Michelangelo's art in the Sistine Chapel and elsewhere, and why countless pieces of great art were made at the behest of bishops and the Pope throughout Europe. The arts point to God when they're right ordered, and away from Him when they're not. In fact, while I am no fan of the catechism promulgated by John Paul II, and edited continuously since then, especially by Francis, the document has a good entry that does prove my point. Paragraph 2501, for those keeping track at home, says that humans are created in the image of God, and that man also expresses the truth of his relationship with God the Creator by the beauty of his artistic works. Indeed, art is a distinctly human form of expression, beyond the search for the necessities of life, which is common to all living creatures. Art is a freely given superabundance of the human being's inner riches. Arising from talent given by the Creator and from man's own effort, art is a form of practical wisdom, uniting knowledge and skill to give form to the truth of reality in a language accessible to sight or hearing. To the extent that it is inspired by truth and love of beings, art bears a certain likeness to God's activity in what he has created. Like any other human activity, art is not an absolute end in itself, but is ordered to and ennobled by the ultimate end of human beings. When the human form is purposely distorted, like we see in that piece of Christmas art, it's only natural to find the image unsettles us. Maybe in certain circumstances it can have some greater point and can be fine, though that is a judgment I'll leave to theological experts, which I'd never have claimed to be. But with sacred imagery, this becomes something to be opposed to, even when the images in question are non-human in sacred imagery, like the zombie mule that is in that artwork. What comes to mind is something Vigano said that I featured at the beginning of the week. In his recent letter on the Christmas situation, he described the effect as leaving the faithful bewildered and abandoned by the hierarchy. He stated that this is more of the continued process of abandoning the Church's most beloved traditions, carried out by those to whom the Lord has entrusted the earthly rule of his Church, which has continued at a rapid pace. Vigano invited the faithful to do acts of penance and prayer that this may be averted, and that we raise our voices to our bishops so that they will continue to offer the sacraments in the Christmas liturgy. His advice is sound, as is often the case on issues related to the sacraments, theology, the Mass, and the Council. I do just wonder how many Catholics will shrug their shoulders and say, oh well, at least we get some weird-looking art to tide us over for Advent and the Christmas season. Will people accept this? Or will they be too distracted by the happenings of the secular world to take notice until it is far too late? I pray that that isn't the case. Let me know what you think about this. Will most Catholics go along with this with barely a shrug? Will they accept the loss of Christmas like Easter? Will you consider seeking out alternative sources for the sacraments and the Mass on Christmas, even if it is with groups you might not have otherwise considered? Will you consider a drive of an hour or longer to get to Mass under this scenario? Assuming, of course, you can drive that distance with the external impediments, we'll say. These aren't comfortable questions, but the reality is this. The loss of Easter was clearly the diabolic at work, and now we're seeing a likely repeat with Christmas. And this art we've seen is the diabolic laughing at us and at our Lord. It's a mockery of all things related to the Nativity. So please, as always, pray for the Church and for the present complicated situation in the world, that our Lord will intervene for us. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.